Well, he's managed to get his life back on track, but others are not so fortunate. Joining us now to talk about this, Labour's Deputy Leader, Tom Watson. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
We were talking to him a little bit earlier on. He says that the maximum stake on these fixed odds betting terminals, which are in bookmakers, and are known as the crack cocaine of gambling, it should be reduced to £2, currently £100. Is that something that, you know, this consultation has been launched, is that something you would back?
Yes, we feel very strongly about this. I mean, Justin, unfortunately, his story is not uncommon. And the reason we're so concerned is gambling addiction in this country has gone up to 430,000 people. We think it's a hidden epidemic and it needs to be dealt with. And these fixed odds betting terminals, people can lose £100 every 20 seconds on these machines.
£300 a minute.
Yeah, so we felt so strongly about it. We put £2 as a state limit in our manifesto because we wanted to be very clear to the industry that they've let things get out of control.
The thing is, he was a wealthy man. He lost everything, as we've said, and he's just starting to come back. But I noticed when I was driving around London yesterday, and I was looking for this, because I knew we were doing this item today, I was looking for betting shops in the high street. And do you know what? It's only in the poorer and working class areas that they're proliferated. In the wealthier parts of the town that I was driving through, not one. You don't see one.
That's right, and the combination of an explosion in online betting, where they target very often low-paid gamblers or vulnerable gamblers, people who are trying to self-exclude from gambling. We think that this industry has got out of control.
So, OK, the industry is out of control and deregulated to this extent because of Labour's 2005 Gambling Act.
Yes, I'm afraid the Gambling Act in 2005 regulated these fixed odds betting terminals. They weren't covered by any law until that point. And nobody understood how there would be this explosion in use and prevalence in communities.
You've actually admitted you got it wrong, haven't you, as a party? You said we miscalculated.
I mean,
badly.
both parties. What's really happening is that law from 2005 is an analogue law for an age before we'd had this technological explosion. Fixed odds betting terminals are one big problem because people in communities, you know, when you become a gambling addict, they're on your doorstep, and that breaks down families and communities.
These machines that people play on, what we used to call the one-armed bandits, you know, the things which proliferate in Las Vegas and all the rest of it, you take a look at them, they are very carefully designed. They're very carefully designed by computers to sucker us in, to stimulate us, to invite us to put more money in, to give us sometimes an unexpected and surprising win. Oh, you got your money back, you can bet it again. They are actually psychological machines, and they really are. Is the legislation going to look at that too? To look at how these machines are built and presented to people?
I'm afraid this consultation is yet another delay. I mean, the government could say today that they want a £2 stake. We've been saying it for many months now. I've been saying it for years after I looked at the effects of the machines in Australia. So I'm afraid we're going to be back here.
What did you find there in Australia?
Well, they call them pokies in Australia, and they're pokey machines. They call them. And you know, the gambling addiction went through the roof. And
because of the way they were designed.
They kind of sort of almost people just become addicted to them a lot more easily.
The trouble is, as a result of, as you say, a mistake made by the Labour government in not introducing the right regulation of these extremely addictive machines, these make a huge profit, £1.7 billion for the bookmakers over an 18-month period. That is a huge amount of money. The government benefits from the duty. You know, this is a problem that now needs to be fixed, obviously because it's ruining lives, but it's going to leave a massive hole in the budget.
Well, there's an urgency to this, and that's why I'm very disappointed with this review. The yield from these machines has nearly doubled in the last 5 years. They're taking more and more and more off the most vulnerable. But when you think that gambling addiction, the most conservative estimate says it costs us £1.2 billion a year to deal with the effects of that, then I think you can easily find the money. The single most important thing government should be looking at is gambling addiction. It's gone up by 1/3 in the last 6 years. That's because of these machines and an explosion in unregulated online gambling.
And just to pick up on Susanna's point there, it's a good one about the hole in the finances. If this legislation comes through and works, does what it's supposed to do.
Oops.
I think somebody's just dropped their stake. Oh, I've lost my question now. Yes. Do you think that it would be possible to introduce a higher tax on the gambling companies? So there's a special tax for them to take away some of these excessive profits that they're
Well, we
making?
think there should be a mandatory levy. At the moment, it's voluntary. The industry takes £13 billion a year off people in losing bets, and it voluntarily gives about £10 million back to look at prevention. It's a drop in the ocean, and we need a mandatory levy to deal with gambling addiction.
Let's talk about sexual harassment and what on earth is happening at Westminster, because a massive can of worms has been opened. If we talk about zero tolerance to sexual harassment, what should happen to people like the Defence Secretary, Michael Fallon, who admits and apologises for repeatedly putting his hand on a woman's knee when she said that it wasn't acceptable? What should happen to him?
Well, look, that's clearly inappropriate behaviour, but I think the bigger issue is what is the system whereby people can deal with complaints. And I'm very concerned that staff at Westminster, dealing with very powerful people, don't have their voice heard. One of the things I'd like to see is trade unions properly recognised by IPSA, the independent body that pays MPs. They now decide contracts and wage levels on behalf of all of MPs. It seems to me that in this age, staff deserve collective representation so that unions can raise concern about harassment, bullying and any other issue that happens in the workplace. Because let's remember, abuse happens in all workplaces, in the media,
no one's denying that, but we are talking about
we've
your
got to get our
workplace.
systems in order.
You talk about the staff. It's the staff who've put, anonymous staff, who've put together this list of what they say is the chief offenders. It's appeared in the Sun today. It's a redacted list. Most of the names aren't on it. But it's incredibly sleazy. I mean, there are dozens and dozens of complaints about people putting their hands on female researchers, getting people pregnant, being inappropriate with men and with women. It just goes on and on and on. It makes you feel slightly sick. Be absolutely honest. Did you know it was as bad as this?
Look, I'm afraid I've not seen that list and I don't know where it's sourced.
Take it as read from me. Did you know it was as bad as this?
No, of course I didn't. And you know, when you hear these cases of abuse, particularly when you work in institutions that have very powerful people, you sort of realise how unacceptable that is. And, you know, I think the one thing that this whole incident has shown is that we've got to get our systems in order in Parliament. And my leader, Jeremy Corbyn, has said we want to stamp it out. He's offered to meet Theresa May to come up with a system where people can feel confident that if abuse does take place, they will be heard and they will be represented.
Finally,
you can't just leave it down to the victims to sort this out. You know,
finally, the Telegraph today, who of course broke the MP's expenses scandal a few years ago, they're saying this could be bigger than that. Do you agree?
Look, who knows where these stories go, right? If these stories are valid, then obviously it's a very big scandal for Parliament. But I think we should take this with some proportion, make sure that our systems are in order, and then see where the evidence takes us.
OK, thanks very much for coming.